Thanks. Welcome. I was asked a while back to come today and talk a little bit about leadership. And it was funny because usually when I'm asked to talk about leadership, it's in a defining context of running a school or education or being a principal. And in this context, I was asked to think about leadership kind of globally. What things do I believe in that would impact any organization? You leading your family, you working at home, you working in an organization, you leading an organization, or you following in an organization. There's a million books written on leadership, I would venture to say. I've read many, not all of them, and they all have a lot of really telling and compelling reasons why you should focus yourself when you're a leader. And there's a lot of good information about what you should do as a leader to be successful or create a successful organization. And just for the fun of it, the other day, I went into Google, because I like Google, and I typed in the word leadership just to see for myself what's really out there. I got 414 million links. 414 million, so I perused them all. No, just kidding. That had the word leadership in them. So it's obviously a well thought about category of what we do and how we function in our daily lives or at work or in an organization. So I want to share with you today 3 things that I believe help any organization move forward. And I like to keep things simple for myself. I'm a fairly simplistic person because I have so many things going on in the scope of the things I do in a day. I like to keep things simple in my mind so that I can stay focused on what I truly believe in and what I'm truly about. So the 3 things I'm going to talk about that I believe are key ingredients for leadership in any venue, in any organization, or in any place in life, even leading your children at home. There's 3 things I want to talk about. The first is culture. The second that I'll talk about is purpose. And the third is motivation. So the first is culture. And culture is simply the context in which we work and operate every day. So everywhere you go, everywhere you visit, you go see a winery, you go downtown and go to a photocopy store like Kinko's, there's a culture within that business. You go to Starbucks to get coffee, there's a culture within that business. I would advocate that when you think about culture, the most important defining thing you should think about in culture is the emotional satisfaction of the people you're working with, the relationships you develop with people, the trust you develop with them, and your ability to care for them and make them feel valued. Those traits, those emotional things, will help you lead your organization to developing a positive and affirmative culture so that everybody wants to come to work every day. People want to be there. They want to succeed because they emotionally feel safe and good about being there. And it takes work. Culture is something that I believe can disappear in an instant if you turn your head away from it or if you neglect it. So it's very important when you focus on culture to daily think about how do I make people feel valued when they come to work with me. If it's my responsibility as the leader to set that environment and set that tone, then every day I want to make sure I foster great relationships with them. I talk to them. I ask them about their family. I ask them about their lives. I ask them how they're doing. Just simple relationship things that help fill them emotionally. So they're prepared to work every day. They're happy to be there. And they want to produce or be connected to me in some sense. So culture is, to me, the cornerstone of developing a positive model for leadership. Once you have a culture in your mind and you start developing that and relating to people and fostering a positive work environment or a place where people feel comfortable connected to you, the second thing I would tell you is define a specific purpose. And that purpose needs, to me, to be very simple, and it has to be crystal clear. I would equate it to looking at a typical bullseye that they use for target practice. It's got a big red dot in the center, and then concentric rings that surround it. Your purpose needs to be that bullseye in the center. And I believe you personally need to have a purpose for why your organization exists, and you need to have a little bit global perspective of your purpose for why everybody in your organization exists. And as you lead and you work and you move around in your daily environment, always make decisions based on your purpose. Why do we exist? What is it we're doing? What is our focus? What are we heading towards in the future? Are we making parts for a car? Are we making wine, as in the case in the Napa Valley? Are we making individual parts for a bicycle? Are we making food that people consume? We grow it, we produce it. Whatever that is, you should have a distinct purpose of why your organization exists and why it is that you want to get better and innovate daily. Innovation is akin to saying change. I like the word innovation better because change tends to scare people. If you tell somebody we're going to change, they think you're going to do something to them personally. I do. Every time I hear the word change, I think, uh-oh, what's coming? So it's nice to focus on a word such as innovation, because if you're innovating, it doesn't seem as daunting or scary to think about, well, okay, we're going to innovate. We're going to move forward. We're going to do something new. So get very clear on your purpose. Why do we exist as an organization, and what is it we want to accomplish? And the third thing I would tell you to focus on or develop is motivation. People want to do well. Sometimes they just don't have the capacity or the environment to do well around them. They don't have the support or what they need. So motivation is simply energizing people to focus on your purpose, what it is your ultimate goal might be for whatever your particular organization is. So in order to energize and motivate people, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of basic human emotion and needs, there's a term he talks about in there called belongingness. And belongingness simply means that every one of us has a need to belong to a group, to a team, to something, whether that's our family, our friends. Well, in the workplace, I would advocate you develop connectedness for people that gets them motivated by giving them belongingness. Put them in teams. Allow them to work together. Give them tasks that are interdependent with one another, so as they work to accomplish their goals, they can have shared success in those goals. They can all continue to work together in one pattern to reach a common goal, and that in and of itself will motivate people because they now belong to a group. They have something that makes them feel good when they walk into work. So if you follow those three things, I work in a venue with children. So I motivate children by setting up and designing my day to allow them to work in groups, to be part of our school and part of me. I spend time during the day letting children, they come into my office all the time during the day to meet and talk to me individually. And I encourage that and promote it all day long. They can come talk to me about anything because I want to motivate them by connecting them to me. I then become a real person versus just someone who shows up to work and sits in an office and goes to district meetings occasionally and then comes back. So it's important that, to me, that you set those parameters and follow those three simple steps and structures, and what you'll find is that your organization will eventually start moving forward. You'll gain momentum, you'll gain ground, people will feel happy at work. People will be more and more motivated to do better. People will start innovating on their own. And the reality of life is everyone in this audience, at some point in your life, you're a leader, and at some point in your life, you're a follower. We all do that every day. Depending on the context of your job, sometimes it's really nice to follow. I personally enjoy it, because sometimes I'm in a venue where I'm expected to lead all the time. And sometimes it's nice to step back and watch someone else take that and empower them and let them be motivated to innovate and move forward so that your culture improves, your leadership skills improve, you start sharing your leadership capacity with everybody you work with. So I'm going to close today with a simple story that was a life experience that happened to me that kind of brought these three critical components together in a real way. I was a graduate student at the University of Colorado at Boulder, and like most graduate students, a job is a good thing. Extra money is a good thing. So I decided to go to work for a professor, Dr. David Chazar is his name. He still works at the University of Colorado at Boulder. He's a psychologist and neuroscientist, and he needed a lab assistant. So I got hooked up through a professor in the School of Education, said, go over and meet Dr. Chazar, he's got a job. So I said, okay. So I went down, I met him. And when I first met him, he shared with me that he does studies with snakes, reptiles, but they're all snakes. And not only snakes, he does studies with venomous snakes. And he does a concept which is called strike-induced chemosensory searching. And I found that fascinating. So when a venomous snake strikes its prey, they will actually go coil back up, sit down, relax, and stay calm for about 5 to 10 minutes, sometimes a little bit longer. And this is what he studied. After that period of time of resting, obviously the prey item, usually a mouse, has crawled off somewhere and expired from the venom, passed on, but the snake obviously wants to eat it. So after about this 10-minute period, with all species of venomous snakes, all of a sudden they'll start flicking their tongue. And it gets a little bit more rapid. Well, come to find out, their tongue is a sensory organ for them. They smell with it. So they'll start flicking, and then all of a sudden they start moving. And they basically will track now this rodent down through smell, go find it, and consume it. So one day we're in the lab, and I'm new at this. The first time you walk into a lab like that, it's rather daunting. All of those snakes have what are called heat pits. So they sense heat. They're used to sensing heat in prey items like a mouse. Well, their heat signature compared to ours is very tiny. So you walk in this room, and he literally had over 100 venomous snakes, all different species from around the world, all alive and well. So when you'd walk in the room, the room would become very active instantly. You'd be walking by tanks, and they were kept in glass aquariums, and snakes would be hitting the side of it because you're a little too close. So one afternoon, we're in there, and I'm cleaning up, getting ready to go. He's going to feed one of the snakes. It happened to be a king cobra. And this particular king cobra was large, about 15 feet long. They're a very large species. It was a male. I believe at the time he called him Rex. Well, anyways, I'm at one side of the room. I look over. He opens the tank, and I knew one thing about king cobras. It was big. It was impressive. I love looking at it in its cage, and that's about all I knew about it, other than they're highly venomous. All of a sudden, and it wasn't a split second, Rex came out of the aquarium when he opened the lid, free in the room, and I found out then they're incredibly quick snakes. And it turned and sat about 5 feet from me on top of another tank, coiled up, stood up, and put its hood out, and was looking right at me. I instantly, in that moment, looked at Dr. Chazar, and I was emotionally and connected to that guy right then and there. The culture in that room became crystal clear in that defining moment, and I'm like, what do I do? And he's like, don't move and don't stare at him. I'm like, okay. So in that defining moment, I instantly made an emotional connection with him because he's the expert, and by the way, he had the little tool to catch the snake. I didn't, and the snake was looking at me and in really close proximity, a little bit too close for my comfort. So I was very still. But in an instant, I had a clear purpose. And my purpose was the same as his. Let's get that snake and get it back in its cage. And for me, the purpose was crystal clear and urgent. I was also motivated because I didn't want to get bit. So I hope from what you get out of this today is that going forward, you think about those three principles. If I'm leading anything, even a Girl Scout troop at home, you bring the girls in and you're starting to do this, focus on culture and relationships first. That deals with things of the heart, not things of the mind. Building a great culture is not an intellectual activity, it's an activity of your heart. So focus on that. Use your heart to develop a culture where people enjoy being where they're at and in the moment. Follow that up with a clear and simple purpose. Why do we exist? And then thirdly, motivate them. Do everything you can to help motivate them and help them feel part of a team or have some belongingness. My hope is that you won't have to get a king cobra in the room to activate people to learn these things or define them, but I certainly know if you follow that simple recipe and you think that way, that whatever you're doing or however you're leading people in whatever capacity you lead people, you will find success.